Namaste and Vanakkam. I am Suresh. I wish to extend a warm welcome for today's webinar, Coping with COVID-19 Process Aspects. This is a part of the CWC webinar series that started on 16th May. I would like to thank you all for taking time off on a weekend to attend this webinar. We are extremely happy with the support we have received so far, and we look forward to your continued support to the forthcoming webinars too. All the questions that came up during the policy aspects webinar were compiled, answered, and mails were sent to the respective participants in 3 days by the 2nd June. As a support to our webinar registrants, we have been uploading the webinar recordings on YouTube online, and the same have received good number of views, encouraging us further. Let's have a quick look at the infographics of the last webinar. The feedback was exceptional, with 98% of them saying it was very good or excellent. Some said it was brilliant ideas to manage an organization. Some said helpful in breaking down complex concepts. The framework shared are great. There were 119 participants from across the globe, spread over 9 sectors, with professional service, education, and manufacturing dominant amongst them. More than 80% of the attendees participated in the 2 polls held during the webinar. For today's webinar, we have our panel of experts consisting of Dr. Murali, Ashok Rao, and Praveena, who have a combined consulting experience of over 60 years, bringing forth to the participants an interesting roundtable interaction on how process changes, improvements, and automation can help organizations cope with impact of COVID-19. We request you to make use of their experience and feel free to raise your queries to benefit fully from the discussions and deliberations over the next 40 minutes. MAGC comes with over 2 decades of management consulting experience, having strengths in government and corporate policy consulting, business process advisory, and training. You may visit our website www.magc.in to know more about us. Before I hand over to Padmaja, my colleague, to give you a brief introduction of our speakers for the day, I wish to bring to your notice certain features and rules of the game. This being a webinar, the participants will be kept in listening mode with the microphone muted throughout the presentation. To make the webinar interactive, we'll be holding a few polls, and the panel of speakers will take up your questions toward the end of the session. The instructions for these polls will be shared at the appropriate time. Please type your questions in the Q&A box shown on your screen and do not use the chat box for this. Thanking you all once again. Over to you, Padmaja.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to share that today's webinar will be a joint session where Dr. Murali will be joined by 2 other speakers as told from MAGC, Mr. Ashok Rao and Ms. Praveena. Ashok and Praveena are executive directors at MAGC. Most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Dr. Murali by now, either by acquaintance or through my introductions in the last 2 sessions. However, for the benefit of the new participants, a short intro. Dr. Murali has a consulting experience spanning more than 3 decades, working with organizations of varied nature in the corporate as well as government sector. He has been a passionate trainer throughout his career. About the other 2 speakers, Ashok is a senior finance professional with close to 2 decades of work experience. He specializes in governance with a focus on public finance management, public policy, e-governance, business process reengineering, and training. Ashok has conducted training and workshops for organizations in the corporate, government, and NGO sectors. He's a short-term consultant to World Bank India from the last 5 years. About Praveena, Praveena is also a senior consultant with more than 15 years consulting experience in the areas of audit, accounting, process advisory, and training. She has conducted training in the areas of information systems and security audit, financial management, costing, and information technology. She has a 6 Sigma Green Belt certification and is a qualified CISA. I now request the speakers to please take over, starting with Dr. Murali. Thank you.
Thank you, Padmaja. Welcome all. Vanakkam and Namaste. We're extremely thankful for the feedback you have given in the last two webinars. Two feedback were extremely inspiring. One which said, this is helping us make big changes at organization level. Thanks a lot. Welcome, sir, whoever has given that. And frameworks you are sharing is great. Thanks a lot, because these frameworks have not come out of, thinking on the couch. They come out of real toil, which we have documented. We welcome you to look at our website, where we have done a lot of case studies. About 60, 70 case studies are available for all of you to look at. Well, what is it that we are going to cover today? Our intention is to address aspects relating to process. Now, the Wisdom Boss, last time we met, we discussed on policies. How, possibly triggered by COVID, there are huge amount of changes that are taking place in organization. We had stressed organizations. And how are they going to perform? So we said we would give approach, particularly to the SMEs and the service sector guys, as to how the Wisdom Boss would go about. So we discussed on policy. Now, policy is at a conceptual level. We said it talks about outcome. So today we are going to deal with processes. Processes would mean sub-processes, and sub-processes would imply activities. So you have processes, sub-processes, and activities. And these need to be strengthened wherever required, re-engineered, redesigned, redone. So for somebody who doesn't understand what we mean by process, it's a series of steps towards a planned end. You always have a start, you always have an end, and steps in between, resulting in something good, whether it be a preparation of a voucher or identifying a new client or whatever it be. Irrespective of the functional areas, you're going to have major, minor, sub, and processes and activities. Agreed. So if we have to touch upon process, there are few questions that come to us. First of all, these lead to, why should somebody have their process clarity? Why should an organization have clarity in their process? Because only then they can deliver. There can be quality in delivery, whether it be goods or service, and processes, quality of processes will determine the performance, and above all, the management will know what is happening, whether things are going as per plans or not. So there are several advantages of having well documented and well structured processes. But for the purpose of understanding what the Wisdom Boss needs to do, we focus on quality, performance, and control. So whenever we say processes which need to be changed, we mean that we would focus on quality of the process to deliver what is wanted. Therefore, the performance of the organization and how the top management would get control. Now, how does one go about it? We already have some policy. We decided that we would either go in for a temporary change of some policy. We would tinker on certain policies as a result of the COVID impact. And ultimately, we need to deal with the technology in order to, we saw that work from home, but then we need to address process. We also need to address people. This is what we focused right from our first session: policy, process, people, and technology. And so what happens when we are looking at processes? There are links between policy and process. So work from home, we have identified policies. And then how does it actually work? We need processes. We may not have processes already in our company for work from home, so we need to develop processes. Therefore, what happens? These changes in processes, we need to, of course, have people and of course have technology, because without technology and people, the processes are going to be incomplete, particularly when you are talking about a COVID situation where people are distributed across, only 20%, 30% of people might come. We don't know when 100% of people come. We don't know how organizations are going to get themselves reorganized post-COVID scenario. Anyhow, from now onwards, the new normal, all of us know, is different. Therefore, whatever changes you're making to the process, you are going to involve people and technology. Incidentally, technology and people are going to be the focus of our next 2 sessions. And therefore, what happens here? What do you need to do? You need to, the wisdom boss need to integrate, which we discussed in detail during our first session. So somebody has to do an integration of policy, process, people, and technology. Now, how does one go about the say in a stressed organization? What does one do? What does our wisdom boss do? And the aligned team do? The wisdom boss and aligned team need to do the integration. So the reason why I'm stressing in the first slide itself on integration is already we have some policy guidelines, and now we are going to discuss process and soon technology and people. If we do not have the focus of integration, then the ultimate delivery of goods and services which the organization intends to do cannot happen. Therefore, now we take the flashback. We are going to look at what we covered last 2 sessions. So let's do a recap. COVID has suddenly hit organizations and created stress across levels in organization and in organizational subsystems or functional areas like HR, marketing, finance, and so on. And therefore, the wisdom boss who uses his brain but ultimately takes a decision with his heart, what does he do? He has to get his strategic focus, get things together. So what does he do? He has to have clarity. He has to look at the changes. He has to look at the cash flow. These are the 3 C's which he has to look at immediately. In our first discussion, we did elaborate on this. And he has to have clarity of what needs to be done. Therefore, what does he do? He does a policy impact analysis because he knows the first area he has to touch is policy. Therefore, he works out, he identifies high, medium, and low areas where the vital, essential, and desirable aspects of policies are listed, and he has which policies he has to completely revamp, which policy he has to tinker, and which policy he has to draft for the first time. For example, work from home, somebody might not have had policy, they might have to. So he does this, and then what he does, he comes with a list of items which he has to do with relation to people, with relation to technology, and with relation to processes. And so what he does, in order to do that, once he does that, automatically it also hits the changes in the environment, and the changes he has to handle will require a restructured organization. We suggested that the restructured organization will be a structural organization where you have people working part-time with you, partly with you, and over a period of time, we also feel that the middle level flap will be removed, everything linked to technology. All the people who are in the middle level who are acting as post offices will be knocked off, and you are going to have a slim and trim organization. So therefore, the policy will hit not only the functional areas, but also the way the organization is structured, because through the structure only, policy can be handed down in order the processes take over. Therefore, we learned that 2 things become important. One we called as this capital, which involve trust, honesty, integrity, and simplicity. And the other one is what we called as values-based management. So a combination of this capital invested in values-based management will bring necessary changes, value add to value adds, profitability to prosperity, performance to sustainability, not only to our organization, to all the stakeholders. And therefore, all the problem cannot be logically solved. That's what Einstein says. No problem can be solved from the level of consciousness that created it. We'll have to go one layer higher. That's the reason why we are working on values-based management. And this is what we saw. We saw that we had covered policy aspects. Now the manager or the wisdom boss have come to the process. Therefore, today, with this background, we are going to see how the policy will lead to process and how the process are to be handled. Let's move to the process aspects. So what is these changes? Now we are slightly enlarging the impact of COVID, in the sense it is not only COVID that is impacting us, there are a lot of things that are going to impact. One is the environment. Environment, all aspects of environment. The global scenario is changing. The way trade is going to happen is going to be different. We already hear a lot of countries how the inter-country trades are going to be. Interstate trades are going to be. Inter-district trades are going to be. There's going to be huge amount of difference. We need to wait and watch. But they are going to impact our processes. The next one, the policies of the government. 100% they are going to influence. With some policy, you may get a better cash flow. You may get better help from banks and institutions. So because of certain policies, there may be a hit on your cash flow. We have to see. Next, how the markets are going to behave. You have a product or service. Are we going to really buy? Are people going to really buy those products, or a different form of those products, your services, or they want your services in a slightly different way? So it depends on how you package it, and then how the economy is going to behave. You know, suddenly when a rickshaw driver comes and tells you, sir, the economy is not doing well, I don't have cash flow. So therefore, how the economy is going to behave is another, of course, added to the whatever COVID is going to do, whether we are going to have second cycle, third cycle, how it is going to impact, whether suddenly there's going to be another lockdown. We have no idea at all. But now that we have understood, we know what to do and where to start. Having stated this, what do we do? So these 5, we can make all the factors be grouped under these 5, and we know they will stress our organization. What that means? It means that there is a problem in our delivery touch points. What do you mean by that? The way we deliver our goods and services could undergo a change in terms of our customers asking for different things, or asking for less things or more things, whatever it be. There is going to be a delivery touch point, and this delivery touch point is the most important aspect which someone has to consider. I always give this example. Suppose you have an amazing car, super engine, but all the 4 tires are flat. It's not even a mobile now. Forget automobile, because it cannot move. Had the 4 wheels been perfect, but the engine not okay, you could at least move it and push it to a corner. So the touch point of the car was on the road through its delivery mechanism, touch mechanism, which are the wheels. Similarly, we have touch points. These touch points are extremely important for us to understand, because we are going to identify delivery touch point related processes when we look at the frameworks today. Therefore, we need to look at those processes which are sensitive to delivery touch points. That's what we are going to do today. So we already have policy. We know policy focus on outcomes. What does the policy say? Well-motivated employees is the HR policy. Processes say good quality produce or good quality service. Hey, but in order to have good quality produce, what are the processes? Yeah, right from procurement of a raw material to the conversion to delivery. Similarly, in services, how are we going to do this? Understand the requirements of our clients and how we are going to deliver. So the policies only give outcomes, the processes only give us outputs. And output is going to be enjoyed by the customer, and he is going to have the outcome of satisfaction, right? Therefore, that is the difference. And therefore, such output could be short term, could be long term, and such outputs could change iteratively, because then for that your process has to change iteratively. If required, you have to tinker. So you are going to have the processes and the policies go on an iterative manner, particularly when you are facing, when the organizations are facing such a situation. There may be small tinkering, there may be small changes which are taking place, of which you guys should be aware of. Therefore, now the question comes to the wisdom boss. Hey, which is the first process I need to touch, and how do I go about it? Which should be? I have in my organization, suppose that organization has documented processes, I have 300 processes. So how do I do? Yes, some board of directors sat and they have given us some policy. They also sent a mail stating that, hey, these policies we are introducing temporarily for the next 4 months. After that, we'll revert back. Very nice. They've sat on the air conditioned room and they're finalized. But processes we are handling, which is the one I need to touch? So therefore, we are going to do two things today. One is called the proximity analysis, and another one is what we call as process change matrix. So PA and PCM, proximity analysis and process change matrix, are the frameworks that are going to be studied today. Simple frameworks as usual, but they go a long way in identifying those sensitive processes that you need to touch upon. Therefore, proximity analysis. What is proximity? Nearness. Nearness to what? Nearness to what we saw just now, delivery touch points. So whatever is nearer to delivery touch points, there are few influencing factors. The first one, which is the process that is proximal or nearer to my revenue generation. I am not too much bothered about my attendance recording process now. No, that process I am not looking into. I am looking into processes that are related to revenue generation. Second, I am looking at processes that are related to cash generation, cash collection, cash management related, treasury related processes. Third, I am looking at processes that will give me control. Why? People are working from home. I don't know whether they're delivering properly. Day after tomorrow morning, this software I need to deliver, or this report I need to deliver, or these goods I need to deliver. So why is that control? Now distributed, we can't meet each other. So how do I control? What are the processes? And fourth, resource allocation in terms of people, in terms of goods, or in terms of even connectivity, security. Connectivity is a big resource. Today, if we do not have proper connectivity, you would not be seeing or hearing me. Somebody has to manage that. There has to be a process within an organization. Imagine an organization with 300 guys or 200 guys or even 20 guys distributed. So therefore, which is the one, whether revenue related or cash related, control related or resource related. So you have 2C and 2R, cash, control, revenue, resources. So if 2C, 2R, you are able to identify those processes, then what do? Simple. You come up with a proximity analysis table. I've given an example, revenue, billing process. Suppose we have goods already, how are we going to do? Traditionally what? They used to come collect it, or courier used to collect it. We used to immediately do this. Now that is not going to happen. Therefore, we need to do billing. collection and remittance at branches. I got 23 branches. Everywhere there is a cash collected. How do I do? What is the process? Resources, I told you already. Then control. Work from home approvals. Various, in the office, it's very easy when the paper moves. Now, how the approval system, how is the workflow going to be? So you analyze, therefore, under each of these, you have identified few processes based on proximity to revenue or cash or control or resources. Having identified, what do? I do what is called as a process change matrix. What is the process change matrix? I need to understand what changes I need to make in these processes, in billing what I need to do, in cash collection what I need to do, etc. Therefore, I come up with a process change matrix where I just taken an example of cash collection. Very simple. So what are that is the process I have taken, sub process, cash collection, cash remittance, and head office reporting. And each we may have 4 activities, 2 activities, and 2 activities. So number of activities. What is the extent of change required? For example, the extent of change required in cash collection may be very high. The cash remittance may be medium, and reporting almost same, very slight difference, only in the format is reporting. Therefore, you have 1, 2, 3 ranks. My dear friends, that is not sufficient. So when you come to process, you need to be clear who is in charge. Like policy, it can't be sat, you can't sit in a room and knock off. No. So it could be finance manager and cashier, so on so. And by what time it has to, these changes have to be incorporated. This is only a project change matrix. After that, the real time life will start, real process will start. So you need to have some people thinking about, I'll come to those slightly later, but then you have a budget also, so that you know if there is a budget constraint, what I can do. You may even suddenly think, oh, this portion I'll outsource, 2% is charging. Chalo, still it's okay, better for me. So I go on outsource. Therefore, please understand that we have proximity analysis, which identify the process that require change, and process change matrix, which will say what changes. I have not given that I need to have one whole hour for that, what type of changes. So you at least know which activities to be touched, how many sub-activities are there, how many activities are there, and then you can list down and then give the responsibility. This was first, this was next. So this is the way someone approaches the change that have to be done to the processes that will undergo shorter or drastic changes. And I think now you have heard enough of me. We will go for poll 1. Very nice. So most of the people have said it's very useful. I'm going to hand over my session to my colleagues who will take you through 6 case studies. So we are going to have 3 sets of case studies which will be presented. Praveena, welcome. Can you take over?
Good evening, everyone. So we have now had RSM explained to us on how to do a proximity analysis and how we are going to arrive at the process change matrix. Now, this would have by now helped us to prioritize and identify what processes I need to change. But next comes the other question of how I will go about changing it, or what are the ways in which I can change it, or what should be my approach to change it. So what I will be discussing would be 3 case studies, which will be common pain points which we are aware of, which SMEs have, continuing our theme of more focusing on SMEs. So the first one being payment processing. Now, payment processing, as we are all aware, has been disrupted in several ways. One is it's far more difficult to do cash payments. It's very difficult to do check processing because the signatory is in one corner, the accountant is not reachable, and the logistics is a nightmare. So therefore, what should be our approach? Of course, online banking should be our approach, but here specifically, we want to discuss something called as multi-user facility. Multi-user facility is something that most of the banks offer, and this allows corporate users to create several users and assign different roles to them, and it acts as a small workflow within the online banking system itself. So the benefit of this is, of course, that if you can see in the example on your screen that there can be a different preparer, there can be another person who's checking it, and a third person who's the final authority who signs it. So what happens is, similar to our ERPs, this will continue to be queued within the system, and only after all the signatories have approved, the payment will go through. So the main advantages are that the new features which are available with online banking have been made available to SMEs also specifically, right? And banks are also trying to restrict the amount of physical contact that they are having. So they are more forthcoming to provide such services. So we can make use of this because it helps us, first of all, to have a very good audit trail. Secondly, you are able to assign different roles, and you can also provide value conditions to it on how much or to what level people can, approve, etc. And there are also banks which allow you to integrate this backward and forward with your own ERP or software. The next thing which we want to look at is how we would go about doing this. First one is, of course, you need to understand the type of facility that your bank is offering. So we have seen that State Bank has two types of accounts called Vistar and Vyapar, where they are able to offer these at different varying levels. It's available with Punjab National Bank, Axis Bank, and ICICI has one specific line called InstaBiz, and it's available to even smaller banks like Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. So understanding what type of facility your bank offers would be one thing to look at. Second is to determine the workflow on who are all going to be involved in the payment processing and what should be their level of approval. Will they only view? Will they be able to approve to a certain limit? All those things. So in this, there is also another feature which allows you to sort of assign roles in the sense that specific roles, where if statutory remittances have to be done or inter-bank transfers have to be done within the organization, these are low risk transactions, and by providing a value limit here also you can delegate these to other members of your team. One important thing to consider here is it's very important to incorporate controls when doing these types of processing also, because if you are new to it, the account codes that you set will determine to which person the funds are transferred. So some of the simple controls would be like, if you're creating a new vendor, you do a small payment first, and once it is going through fine, you go forward and you expand your, you do the further payments. So small controls like this have to be put in place. And the common sense controls, which would be doing your regular reconciliations and doing a periodic review of your payee list, all these controls also definitely you have to put in place. So this would be one case study. Now we will move to another case where most of the organizations need to do deliveries, and now there are several complications with respect to physical deliveries. Here most of us have this thing that we want to get the acknowledgement signature from our whoever is the receiver of our goods. Now that has got disrupted, and we have complications because people don't want to use the stylus, touch the handheld devices, etc. So here, this has become a really good area where a lot of new apps have come which facilitate contactless delivery. Okay, here I will try to explain one such software where you can see on the screen that the sender is there, the receiver is there, and there is a third-party delivery agent. So in the first step, what happens is that the sender will send of course, hand over the physical goods to the delivery agent, and parallelly will share a sort of a code, QR code or an OTP with the receiver or the customer. Okay, this can be done through mobile or through email, or several modes are available for this. At the point where the delivery happens, the delivery agent hands over the physical goods to the receiver, and the receiver will share the OTP or the QR code with the delivery agent. So this would in turn be entered by the delivery agent into the system, which would complete the transaction and complete the acknowledgement loop. So now all this is possible to be done through very simple apps which are readily available and can easily be integrated to any existing system, ERP or software which you have. So here again, the important steps would be, first of all, to identify the appropriate technology for you, because that depends on whether because here you have several parties involved, isn't it? So whether your people are more comfortable with mobile phones, whether it should be WhatsApp message, whether it should be an email, should it be a phone call, all those things, right? So you need to identify the appropriate technology, and of course implement it and communicate it to your customers. Especially creating awareness is important, because as with other things, before delivering itself, when the delivery agent calls, if your customer shares the OTP, then the whole acknowledgement process will go for a toss. So those types of awareness creation, etc., would be essential. You will find two names on the screen. One is called Manage Teams and the other is called Scandit. Manage Teams is an Indian organization, and they have several success stories with big organizations like HP Gas and Avin. And they have applications which easily integrate with software. Scandit is a Singaporean company. They also have a similar system with them, and that is available for free for a short while, because it's during this crisis they have offered it free. So these are some things which you can explore. Of course, there are several other providers also in the same space other than purely software based solutions. There are also small devices which can accompany your goods, which act like an RFID, etc. So there are several solutions, but the QR code and the OTP solution is very easy to implement, and it's quick and cost effective. So this is the second case study. Now we will look at a third one. Third one is on bank reconciliation statement. Bank reconciliation statement is really an essential evil. So the issue is that it's repetitive, it's time consuming, it's error prone, and the volumes are difficult to handle. And especially when you have your team sitting in different places, it becomes very difficult. With other priorities for accountants during this crisis, doing BRS is definitely becoming a more difficult situation. So here we will discuss something which is this is sort of a one-stop solution. All of you would have heard of RPA. It's been discussed very much now. So RPA is basically robotic process automation. So this is a very ideal solution for to solve some problem like BRS. A little bit on RPA. Of course, I will not too much discuss in detail. We'll handle it during the technology aspects webinar. But what is RPA? RPA in simple terms is use of software robots, which are called as bots, to handle your business processes. In very simple terms, that's what it is. So in its simplest form, it is nothing but programming a small bot to repeat a set of instructions again and again. So in its simplest form, that's what it is. But there are more complex bots which are able to incorporate AI and which are able to do predictive analytics, etc. also. Typically, what type of processes you would look at taking to RPA would be all these monotonous, repetitive processes which do not involve much of decision making, right? So they are more intensive in terms of the manual interventions are intensive. They don't involve much of decision making. So these types of activities are what we will look at automating using RPA. Now, BRS forms a very good use case for RPA in this situation. There are several leaders in the industry like Manipal Hospitals and Titan who have had very good success with automating their reconciliations, because what the bots are able to do is that they are able to automatically log into the online banking, download the bank statements, in parallel log into your ERP or your accounting system, download your what has been recorded in the books, do a comparison and provide the BRS in the set whatever is the standard format of your organization. This allows huge organizations which have complications with respect to BRS to easily account for their collections, to easily handle the mismatches, etc. So they are able to reallocate and refocus their resources on more critical activities rather than a repetitive activity like a reconciliation. Also, the other advantages are that increasingly bots are able to handle things like voice recognition. They are able to do what is called as screen scraping. They are able to do image identification, etc. So all these enable them to be very powerful partners in automating processes. Okay? So this is a new trend, and it's definitely gaining huge momentum at this juncture. So it is something that all of you can explore. So some important things to bear in mind when trying to move to RPA is, first of all, you should identify a small activity. So the important thing with respect to RPA projects is that they should always be implemented in a short time span. And that's what helps us to get a payback very quickly. And typically, the industry says that in 9 months, you can get back the money that you spend in implementing an RPA. And there are organizations which claim that when they repeatedly fine-tune the RPA, they are able to even get a payback as quickly as 3 months. So it's definitely something to explore. Of course, RPA also requires people to review and fine-tune, and something like the BRS situation which we discussed here can always be expanded to other areas like doing reconciliation with vendors, reconciling with customers, etc. So it provides you with scope to expand because it's a customizable software. So the leading providers of RPA are, of course, UiPath and Blue Prism. UiPath is an American company and Blue Prism is from UK. Typically, what we observe is that the smaller tech providers, they obtain a license on our behalf from these two entities, and they use these two entities have a robust platform, so they are able to use that to customize our bots and implement it for us. So I do hope that this has given you a bit of an idea on the sort of approach that you can take to common problems that we have with respect to process. While I have discussed some cases at more an operations level, I now request Ashok to share with us a few cases to give us a more broad-based idea of the sort of innovations we have in process. Over to you, Ashok.
Thanks, Pravina. They say there are 3 questions that come up before mankind now. One is, when will the pandemic end? Second is, am I audible? And the third one is my screen visible? So at least in today's seminar, we have answers to 2 of the 3 questions. And I hope very soon we have answer to the third one as well. So what I'll attempt to do, so Pravina took us through some specific case studies, specific solutions, and I'm sure each of you would have got something to pick up from there right away and apply to your business. So what I'll try to do is present 3 case studies. Let's taking a step back to see how businesses in other industries manage to solve the disruptions in processes created due to COVID. So when I say disruptions or challenges, broadly bucketing, at least most of them fall into 3 buckets, which revolves around moving people and material around the place in the absence of physical contact, restrictions on specific people to access their critical infrastructure, whether it is hard infrastructure or their IT infrastructure. And the biggest question is how to reach the customer in this scenario. So we look at how few companies handled it, or few use cases where they handled it. Specifically, we have taken industries which you may not directly relate to, because we strongly believe that some of the biggest solutions to challenges come from outside your industry. So when you keep your eyes and ears open as to what is happening elsewhere, so you get very good solutions, and that is what has driven the selection of the case studies as well. And hopefully you will be able to draw some learning from this, not the direct solution per se, as you would get from Pravina's case studies, but how the solution was applied, how they went about applying the solution and related to the challenges you have. So the first case study is about what was done at the Bangalore International Airport. the contactless boarding process that was introduced in Bangalore International Airport. The challenge, as we all know, is to ensure minimum physical contact when people are moving throughout the boarding process. At the same time, not compromising on the turnaround time and also not compromising on security aspects. So this challenge was addressed. Many of you might be aware, there are videos floating around on how they did it. Heavily banking on technology by using sensors and scanners throughout the process, by using the customer's mobile for key steps in the process, so that it can reduce human to human physical contact to a minimum. And not only the solution was implemented, they undertook a widespread education and awareness campaign so that customers don't feel like fish out of water when they see the new process, which is very critical when you do a process change. And they also placed people there to still help people who couldn't grasp a new process quickly. So how did they go about it, or how do we go about it when there is a similar challenge in our business process? The first step is to clearly understand the current process and put it down in a document. We always are under the illusion, all of us telling our people, we've been doing it for many years, we know our process. But it is when you start putting it down on a document, you realize the gap between the cup and the lip. So first document the process. Then throughout you could use a flow chart, or you could use a simple table steps, a table showing the steps and people involved. But the idea is, once you have documented the process, the individual activities, identify those activities where there is a physical touch component or a physical touch point, and then look towards how such kind of touch points have been eliminated elsewhere in the industry. Implement the technology using the framework that Dr. Murli mentioned on the proximity for the prioritization as well as your cost benefit analysis. Implement it, and most importantly, communicate and train your people. Train your in-house people and communicate it to your stakeholders who are most likely to get affected by that process. So what was done at Bangalore is available. There are very good communication campaigns, and I haven't been to the airport after that has come. So we hope it is also working as projected on the ground. So case number 2, we moved to a completely different area. What was done in government? Padmaja mentioned we do a lot of work with the government, particularly in the area of public finance. And one particular case which caught our eye and which we thought is relevant today is the initiative by the Treasuries Department of the state of Orissa. So the state treasuries handles huge volume of payments on a daily basis, high volume of payments, as well as thanks to COVID, the urgency of payments was also quite high because expenditure had to be incurred, particularly on health, police and all that. So, but then they had a critical bottleneck in terms of access to the treasury management system, which is a highly secure software. It's very similar to a banking software. So treasury staff were not able to come to office, because of which they were not able to access the system by which they can initiate bills and then approve payments and carry on the entire cycle. Neither was there time to do workarounds like Bangalore Airport did it, since they had the time to implement. So what was done in such a case? Immediately circulars were issued, as is typically done in the government. These circulars authorized payment initiation as well as approval through exchange of emails. Now, the moment I say email, I think some of you would be thinking, oh, this is a high risk, particularly when we're talking of financial transactions. The increased risk was mitigated by bringing in post-audit processes where they said such transactions will be audited 100%, or an extra degree of diligence will be carried out when such transactions are audited. Not only that, it was made clear that this is a temporary measure with a specific time period until which this could be done. Most states have done something similar, but the documentation by the Orissa Treasury was what caught us, and that is working fine ever since. So this is a case of high proximity, but then very little time to react, and you go one step back from a highly automated environment to an email-based environment, but strengthen the controls so that your risks are under control. So this was one aspect which I had to cover. And of course, the entire process had to be formalized in terms of circulars so that everybody understood it the same way. So the third case is with respect to reaching to the customer. I think most organizations, MSMEs also, whether you're in product or service business, one very, very important channel of reaching out to customers is participating in trade fairs, exhibitions, seminars, where you get to interact with customers, build leads, and then follow up on those leads and convert them into concrete prospects. But COVID has put an end to all of that. There are no more trade fairs or exhibitions happening. But then solutions are available. The re-engineering adopted, the solutions are available where the entire thing is handled in a virtual manner, which is extremely similar to how it happens in a physical exhibition. The moment a customer comes, he gets to enter a lobby where he gets to see all the companies which have put up their stalls. He gets to click, there is a welcome desk as well where he is guided. He gets to click on a particular stall where, suppose he clicks on your stall, you have your people waiting there, attempting to lure the customer to your stall, answer the questions, interact with the customer, show product demos and videos, hand out brochures, which go into a virtual briefcase of the customer and gets emailed to him at the end of his visit as a PDF. So this entire customer experience, he even has a seminar hall where he can go and attend seminars which are happening live. So probably the entire experience, except for the food court part of it, is virtualized, and plenty of such solutions are available. If you Google, you can come across many solutions. But what is very relevant is you need to select something which is relevant to your industry, because the dime a dozen lot of such virtual fairs are happening. So you need to be conscious you get into a seminar which is covering your industry. And more importantly, having invested on such a solution or subscribing to such a service, how do you make the best use of this entire thing? Which again comes to putting down the value chain for the customer end to end, from his point of entry till the exit. And what is the offering at each place? Who is going to do it? What is the standard operating procedure when a customer visits your virtual stall is very important. This is where again it goes back to laying down the process clearly so that it is clear and you derive maximum return on your investment in that seminar. So these were the three case studies that I had to present before you. So I suppose the combination of Praveena's case study and mine would have given you enough inputs to take away, and you can always get back to us if you need more information on any of this.
Thank you, Ashok. I think we'll go to poll 2. Yeah, so it is interesting to find that the finance and accounts seem to be the function which requires a lot of process changes. Possibly. I mean, I may agree with you. Yeah, I think we'll move further. Dear participants, thanks. You know, your today, it's going to take few minutes longer. Normally we close exactly by 5 or 5:05. Today it may take a few minutes longer, please, because we want to complete it. Because of the cases, we took some time. No issues. Now we come to the most important part, implementation. How does one implement these process changes? And so what does our team do? Wisdom Boss with aligned team. They need to have a checklist. Oh, this is an old solution. No, because what is going to be in the checklist is different. First, we need to ask the question, do I have any process documentation at all? I know a lot of SMEs do not have documentation of their processes. I think now is the time, in case you don't have documentation, better start. So SOPs become very important. And then second, who has the process know-how or the knowledge? Where is the knowledge? No, this has been happening from a long time. I don't know, because that man, he retired last month. No chance. Who has the knowledge? Whether somebody inside has the detailed knowledge of process, or you have to get somebody from outside to help you with that portion. You have to be very, very clear. Otherwise, your implementation doesn't happen. You don't know what to do. Sometimes you simply depend on technology, guys. While technology can be a tool, technology can never give you solution. So you need to be careful. Then what is the appropriate technology? Then monitoring and control. Because we said we had people plan, we had resource plan, everything. And is it going as per plans? Next 2 weeks, the whole thing has to get ready. Next 1 week, the things have to get ready. Who is handling that? And also, we need to be sure that there is a learning curve. All of us are learning. On the first day, it's not going to happen. It is going to be iterative. So while implementation, please check whether you have the right documentation. Please do that. Even as Praveen was saying, simple document at least you can have. Who has the process know-how? Are we having appropriate technology? Who is going to monitor and control the process of implementation and give allowance for learning? And while doing so, which is a process which is going to take some time, few weeks or few months, this has to be put in place. Communication and collaboration of the team. All the team members will be connected daily. All the team members will be talking to each other. This is very important. Added to that, you need to have collective learning. Learning has to happen. If required, you can suggest some online courses for people to do. The courses could be on technical matters. It can be on technology matters. It could be on behavioral matters. These three become important. Technical meaning the subject skills, whether it be accounting or marketing or something. The whole marketing guys will have to do digital marketing. Accounting guys, you will have to understand the nuances. And then technology aspect, IT, what to do. Are we going to do an RPA? How will you go about it? RPA is simple. With Excel, some RPAs can be done. We'll discuss about it in the next session. So these two has to happen. And there are key factors which ensure that this happens successfully. I am going to repeat. We need to have this capital for that. Trust, honesty, integrity, and simplicity. Now, people who have been following, you will understand the importance of integrity and simplicity. In the earlier sessions, we had pointed out that look at integrity, integrity of the process, integrity of the control, integrity of the people, simplicity of governance, simplicity of process, simplicity of rules. Unless these are going to be integrated properly, you are not going to get your processes right. And not that your turnaround time is very, very short, right? Therefore, you need to do that. And I have again marked all this integrity and simplicity with regard to all the 5 aspects we have considered. The SOP, the know-how, the technology, monitoring, learning curve. These 2, integrity and simplicity, should be there in all these. You cannot have a document which is 200 pages long. No, it won't help. Please understand golden rule. If there is a problem, it means there is a solution. Simple. You might not know how to, but there is already a solution. Then that is a package you cannot have separately. And of course, the values-based management system, because that's what integrates both of that. Therefore, you have these 3 important boxes, which are the checklist, which you need all these 5 ingredients, your integrity and simplicity, which need to be there, which is your capital, supported by values-based management system. You will be professional, you will be human, you will be ethical, and you will be spiritual. And so what happens? This simplicity and integrity will give you efficiency, your return on investment of the changes you make in the process. And what does values-based management system gives? It makes you reach where you have to. So effectiveness happens only with that. You have started the organization with the objective of satisfying your client through your goods or services. Therefore, that effectiveness can happen only when you have values-based management system. Efficiency will happen when integrity and simplicity are oriented. Therefore, the boss, the wisdom boss, will use his brain and of course his heart. For what? If this has to be successful, he has to balance 3 things: the process, the technology, and the people. This is a fine balance he has to make. we guarantee that if somebody is going to invest in this capital and follow a management system which we call values-based management system, 100% the required changes in process and their integrity can be maintained. Therefore, today summing up, the COVID, which created lot of stress in organization, resulted in understanding that there has to be changes in 3 W's: workplace, workflow, and work culture. And the wisdom boss, in order to get clarity, change, and cash flow, which are his focus areas, he embarked in understanding the policy, process, people, technology, and to have on process, he had to get clarity. Therefore, he did a PIA and then identified the policy changes so that the outcomes are maintained, and in order to create the respective outputs to be robust, he has to look at the processes, for which he does proximity analysis to identify the key areas where he has to touch in processes, and then in order to identify the risks associated, how to do, etc., he uses process change matrix and identify who will do, by which time it will be done, and allocates budget. For that, he has a checklist consisting of 5 things: the SOP, the knowledge, the technology, monitoring and control, and the learning. He invests in this capital, particularly integrity and simplicity, and using values-based management system, he brings efficiency into the product, into the process, and effectiveness as a whole. And therefore, now with this, he is clear that the process is all right. And next, we are going to look at technology. See, process, technology, people, they are all go together. Today itself, while discussing the case studies, we did touch upon technology. And therefore, with this, I conclude, and we will now go on to Q&A session. I hand over to my colleague Suresh. We will take at least 1 or 2 questions so that we give a completion to this webinar. Please, Suresh.
Thanks a lot to Dr. Murali, Praveena, and Ashok. I think the session was so informative that not many questions have come. Okay, few questions came in before the webinar started. So let me go with that first. The first question which came up, I would like to address it to Dr. Murali. In the last webinar, that was when relating to policy changes, you said policy changes need to guide process changes. Is this true in all cases? Will not process change also trigger policy changes?
I don't know whoever has asked the question. That's a very, very good question. And we actually touched upon it today. You know, in the case study Ashok presented also with, let's say, the treasury case study, he already said, yeah, it is a very, very temporary process change that was made, but we had to have something to hold that on, whether it is right or wrong. They had to pass circulars. Circular is a policy decision that is conveyed from them. Similarly, the policy decision, only with policy decision, in general, processes change. But however, processes also can trigger some policy changes which you will experience on the way. That's the reason why we put it as a cycle. If you look at the diagram which I had showed you today, there are 2 arrows, one coming from policy to process, other going from process to policy. It is iterative. That's why I use the term iterative. Good question. The thinking will start from policy, but move to process. But any aberrations in the process and finding difficulty that is restricted by policy will have to be changed. I think that's how we have to take it. It's iterative.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Murali. Praveena, I want you to take this question. How can we think of process reengineering when we have severe cash flow issues, particularly finance department is under cash crunch, and you are talking about technology and things like that? How do you think it's possible?
Ultimately, it's money matters, right? So, in fact, this was captured by RSM's discussion when you would have seen in the PCM also, the policy change matrix, there is one column for budget. So of course, without considering budgetary constraints, we can't do anything. But we have to bear in mind it's a chicken and egg problem. Without making changes also, it's going to be impossible to sustain in the change scenario. And therefore, we have to see what we want to strategically focus and definitely do systematic investment. Having said that, much of the technology today are affordable, and we can scope for solutions which will work within our budget. So some of which we discussed today. I hope that answers.
Thanks a lot, Pravina. Ashok, I want you to take this question. Who in my organization should be responsible for the process change? Is it the respective department, or is it the corporate office, or some places they call it as head office?
Yeah, my reply to that would be that it has to be both. The change has to be driven by the corporate office or the senior management, as we call it, because they are the people who can do this PSA and decide the priorities. They are the people who are best able to assess whether this process change can happen by people in-house, by the in-house actors, or they need external help in getting the process change. And they are also the people who control the budget incidentally. But to implement the change as such, it has to be cross-functional team, definitely involving people who've been in the business for quite a long time, who know the nitty-gritties of the business and the implications of the process change that is done. And also because the senior management might not have the bandwidth to monitor the project on a day-to-day basis and liaise with the different stakeholders. So the combined model works best in our experience.
Thanks, Ashok. Due to shortage of time, we'll just take two more questions. Probably Dr. Murli can take it quickly. This is a bit of a big question which I'm not able to shorten. Whether there could be a process that may be common to two proximity factors, where one might need high range of change and the other may not need any change at all. Questioner says, I'm not able to come up with any example, but is that possible? If yes, how can that scenario be handled?
No, it's very simple. You can look at major change and minor change in terms of financial transactions. For example, you may have to go in for a major renegotiation with your suppliers, with your customers. These are all major changes that will take place in terms of the time, in terms of delivery period, so many things. The entire clauses may change, but the payment terms may not change. So there is a major change and minor change that can happen even in one contract. This is one. The other thing could be your employees. There is going to be a major change in the way you are going to look at the process working from home. But your payroll will not change. All this with relation to employees. So therefore, there will be a major and minor change. In case any other specific question, you can always pose. This is what immediately struck me.
Okay. Since you mentioned about work from home by employees, the next question is being specifically addressed to you. Work from home employees may work, actually employees may end up working with another company also. I think this participant probably did not participate in the earlier webinar where you touched upon it.
Yes.
One employee working for two organizations. So he wants to know how to mitigate this risk. There is some amount of risk in this. So how do you mitigate this?
Yeah, there are two ways to look at it. One is mitigating the risk. The other one is, I always tell my students and clients that as technology increases, the people who are going to make more money are the advocates. So you need to have such a strong contract and measurement systems. In the next session, when we are covering technology, we will cover technology by which tools are available today to have a watch over the employees functioning in front of the screen. So those things will be taken into cognizance, like how the Companies Act has allowed now electronic board meeting. Similarly, you're going to have such changes taking place. So we will see, and it is going to be through contracts and the way their performance is measured, both technically and through measurement. That's how it's going to happen.
Thanks a lot. I think we are overshooting time, so we will probably answer the couple of more questions have come up. You can send your reply to them directly. I would request all the participants to put their opinion or feedback in the chat section. And I'm glad that all of you have stayed till the end. So before you, as you're listening to the vote of thanks by my colleague, you can please give your feedback in the chat. Thanks a lot. I think now it's over to Mohanty for vote of thanks.
So, dear participants, thanks a lot for active participation and comments. There are valuable questions. Hope you got all answers. This session would have given all of you a sense of how to go about addressing process aspects of coping with COVID. We discussed different scenarios across sectors and functions. Also, we hope the proximity analysis and process change matrix are useful takeaways for you from this session. The interlinkages of these aspects with technology and people will be covered in the forthcoming webinars. Many of you reached out to us and expressed that these sessions are useful and relevant. Thanks for your encouragement and support. We will strive to deliver value in the forthcoming sessions too. As always, the webinar recording will be uploaded online and shared with you shortly. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get regular updates. The best way to cope with COVID invariably involves use of technology in one form or another. Sooner we adopt, the better chances at success. In the next webinar, we will focus on the technology aspects. You will receive the invitations in the coming weeks. Those of you who have opted to register all the webinars need not register again. You will directly receive the webinar links. Feel free to share webinar details with your contacts who you think may find this series useful. Your feedback has helped us to refine the webinars to suit your requirements. You can also write to us at enquiries@migc.in. Thanks once again for your valuable time. See you in the next webinar.